As the reading for this week explains, continuity editing is a system for staging, filming, and editing movies that is used to maintain graphic, spatial, and temporal continuity between shots. So we see in continuity editing intersections between editing, cinematography, and mise-en-scène, as well as an illustration of how all of these elements of film form work together to present the movie narrative to the audience. In order to maintain graphic, spatial, and temporal continuity between shots within the same scene in a movie, the staging and filming of those shots follow the 180-degree rule, which establishes an invisible line known as the axis of action, based on the sightlines and blocking for the characters whose actions the shot is depicting. In this example, the action is the conversation between the two people sitting in the chairs. During filming, all of the various camera positions used to film different takes must stay within a 180-degree area on one side of that line. The cameras can still move to utilize mobile framing, and they can be placed in different positions to get different types of shots based on distance and angle, as long as they stay on the same side of, and do not cross, the axis of action. We're going to be going over the 180-degree rule in more detail in class this week, and we'll be taking a look at some film examples so that you can get a better idea of what this looks like in practice. For now, what's most important is that the 180-degree rule is used during staging and filming to keep eye lines consistent across shots, to keep actor positions and lighting consistent across shots, and to keep the direction of actor movement consistent across shots, in order to ensure that when shots from different takes of this scene captured during filming are combined into the movie version of the scene, all of these things will match up in a way that allows the audience to clearly follow what is happening on screen. In addition to the 180-degree rule, continuity editing also utilizes specific types of edits to help maintain graphic, spatial, and temporal continuity when transitioning between shots. We'll also be discussing these in more detail and looking at examples as part of our class this week. In discussing the 180-degree rule, the reading for this week also includes a discussion of different staging, filming, and editing techniques that can be used to cross the axis of action without losing graphic, spatial, or temporal continuity, which is mostly done by repositioning the axis of action over the course of the scene. We'll also be talking more about this and looking at some examples in class this week so that you can see how this is done. Finally, it is worth noting as part of this discussion of continuity editing that while this is the style of editing and staging and filming that is most commonly used in narrative films, there are some reasons that a film may deliberately choose not to use continuity editing, either for artistic purposes, as in the case of avant-garde cinema, or for the purposes of providing subjective narration. In narrative films, discontinuity editing is often used in dream sequences, scenes depicting hallucinations, or scenes where characters' sensory perceptions are altered by drugs or alcohol, precisely because the graphic, spatial, and temporal disjunctions it creates between shots and the confusion that this creates for audiences while viewing the movie are an effective way of using movie editing to simulate the characters' subjective experiences in those moments. The last way in which movie editing is commonly used both to establish temporal relationships between shots and to maintain temporal continuity is through the practice of elliptical editing. Elliptical edits are used to create a temporal ellipsis, or a gap in time, either between shots within the same scene or in the transition between two different scenes. Elliptical editing is frequently used to shorten the screen duration of plot events by cutting out parts of the action that are not necessary for plot development. So, for example, if you think back to our discussion of movie narratives, you'll remember that a movie's story covers a longer range of time than the events that make up a movie's plot. Likewise, while a movie's plot may cover several days, weeks, months, or years, the scenes shown on screen will only depict single events from certain days during that time period. And even then, we only see brief glimpses of time on those days, with the transitions between scenes signifying the passage of all of the other time in between. One of the most obvious recent examples of this is the cut between scenes in Avengers Endgame that is used to signify the passage of 5 years between the end of the previous scene and the title card that introduces the next scene and announces the shift in screen time between scenes. Our example from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse of the ways editing is used to establish the passage of time is also an illustration of a common use of elliptical editing within scenes. Here, it is not necessary for us to see Miles sleep all the way through the night to understand that he has done so. Rather than seeing this entire action, sleeping, from the time that Miles goes to bed until the time that he wakes up from beginning to end, all we need is a few quick shots representing different moments in time throughout the night in order to be able to clearly follow what is happening. This allows the film to depict Miles sleeping in much less screen time than it would take for that action to unfold in real time. Now, because both elliptical editing and time-lapse cinematography are used in that scene, and because both of those techniques are different ways of shortening screen duration, a bit of clarification on these concepts is necessary, because time-lapse is not a kind of elliptical editing, and elliptical editing is not a form of time-lapse. They're two entirely different cinematic techniques. Here's what the difference is. Time-lapse is a cinematography technique that uses speed of motion to portray the passage of time within one single shot by showing us an entire action from beginning to end, without interruption and at an accelerated frame rate. In contrast, elliptical editing is an editing technique used to portray the passage of time through edits between multiple shots that show us selected parts of an action with gaps in between, rather than showing us the whole action from beginning to end. As with continuity editing, there are specific editing techniques that are used for elliptical editing as well. And as with all of the other editing techniques that are discussed in the reading for this week, we will be going over these in more detail and looking at examples in class, so we'll have a chance to see what they look like and how they work in practice. Finally, we'll also take a look at some of the other common editing techniques that are used in movies, and we'll take a look at some examples of those techniques too, so that you'll be able to get an understanding not just of their definitions, but also what they actually look like on screen. The arrangement and juxtaposition of movie images is not the only type of editing that occurs during the post-production phase of movie making. The mixing of sounds recorded for the film to form the movie soundtrack, and the combination of the soundtrack with the image track during sound editing are also part of the post-production process, and are also a necessary step in putting together the release print of the film that gets shown to audiences in movie theaters or on streaming services. In our next video, we'll take a closer look at movie sound, and we'll examine the way that sound is also used in films to portray story information, to provide subjective narration, to communicate implicit meaning, and for artistic purposes. We'll also consider the ways in which mise-en-scène, cinematography, editing, and sound all work together to present movie content to audiences.